Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into the cobbled alleys of ancient Rome, where the air smells faintly of warm bread, smoke from early fires, and the faint tang of olive oil soap. You're not here as a senator or a gladiator. No, you're a housemaid one of the many unseen hands that keep a Roman domus running while everyone else pretends the world spins effortlessly. Before you can even rub the sleep from your eyes, you're jolted awake by the clatter of wooden wheels on stone as market carts rattle past, squeaking like tired old mice. It's not exactly the soothing alarm clock you dreamed of, but it works. And let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive this lifestyle for a week, let alone a day. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I love hearing where you're tuning in from, so let me know your location and local time down in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle across the small servant quarters with bare feet, feeling the coolness of the terracotta tiles under your toes. It's just before dawn, that grey, hushed hour when the world isn't sure if it wants to wake up or roll over. The city is already murmuring, though merchants setting up their stalls, bakers pulling loaves from ovens, and someone yelling at a mule that refuses to move. You sigh, tying the rough linen sash around your waist. This, you think, is going to be another long day. The first task, water. You trudge toward the storage jars, their heavy terracotta necks waiting to be tipped into buckets. Roman households didn't have the luxury of running taps. Every drop must be fetched, stored, and guarded like a treasure. Sometimes you wish for a magical pipe that delivers hot water straight to your hands, but then again, if Rome had that, half the maids would be out of work. Historians still argue whether most domestic servants had to haul their own water from public fountains, or if larger households had someone dedicated just to that grueling task. In your case, well, lucky you, you're the one lugging it. The streets at dawn are oddly alive. As you step outside, a chill breeze greets you, carrying a mix of scents, smoke, bread, and something less pleasant likely, the refuse tossed out from yesterday's feast. A neighbor's dog barks at you, tail wagging as if it's 100% sure you have sausages hidden in your tunic. You don't. You wish you did. You pass a couple of other servants who nod at you, their faces as sleepy as yours. They're all on the same mission, water, the lifeblood of this city that's too busy conquering the world to worry about who's doing the laundry. You reach the nearest public fountain, where water gushes from the spout of a carved lion's head. The sound is oddly calming, like nature's ASMR track. You lean over, cupping your hands to splash your face, the cold shock waking you faster than any cup of coffee could. Nearby, another maid complains about the state of her mistress's sandals apparently. The lady stepped in something unmentionable at the last dinner party. You smile, because every maid knows the stories. Fancy sandals, endless complaints, and the unspoken truth that it's always your fault when the laundry doesn't smell like a field of roses. As you haul the first amphora of water back, your arms ache. These jars are no joke, they're shaped like they were specifically designed to test your patience and biceps. Some scholars claim Roman servants were as fit as modern-day gym-goers simply from carrying these ceramic monsters. Maybe that's true, your shoulders disagree. By the time you reach the kitchen courtyard, your breath is shallow, and your tunic sticks to your skin. You pause for a moment, leaning on the door frame, wondering why nobody ever writes epic poetry about the heroic journey of a housemaid and her bucket. Inside, the kitchen is already stirring. The cook, a stout woman with a voice that could shatter amphorae, yells at a young boy for not grinding enough grain. A pot of lentils simmers over the hearth, releasing a warm, earthy smell. You deposit your water triumphantly, like a champion returning from battle, though no one claps for you. There's a stack of laundry, waiting tunics, towels, and a toga with suspicious wine-stained sand. You can feel them glaring at you, demanding attention. As the sky brightens into pale gold, you prepare the water for washing. You sprinkle in ash to create a primitive soap solution, stirring with a wooden paddle. It smells faintly like a campfire, but you've grown used to it. Sometimes you dream of modern detergent with lavender scents and commercials promising whiter whites. Instead, you get ash water and sore knuckles. But hey, at least you're keeping traditions alive that historians will one day find oddly fascinating. Out in the courtyard, a rooster crows like it's auditioning for an opera. The household is waking, The master mumbling about appointments, the mistress ordering fresh flowers, children chasing each other with clay figurines. And you, standing ankle-deep in wash water, are quietly holding the whole thing together. If anyone asked, you'd say it's a good life mostly, except for the fact that there's no such thing as a day off. The sun peeks over the rooftops, warm light spilling across the courtyard. You pause, wiping sweat from your forehead, and allow yourself a tiny smile. This is just the first hour of your day, but somehow you're already half exhausted. The moment your arms stop throbbing from carrying the water, another thought creeps in: this is only the warm-up. Laundry day in a Roman household means one thing: the battle of the washing water. You stand there staring at the clay jars, each one brimming with the icy treasure you just hauled back, and you can't help but wonder how many more trips you'll make before the day is done. The kitchen boy looks at you with a mischievous grin, knowing full well you'll be back at the fountain at least 3 more times. It's practically the ancient Roman version of an endurance challenge minus the cheering crowd or prize money. You set about heating some of the water over the hearth. The fire crackles, spitting tiny sparks like it has an opinion about your laundry ambitions. Roman washing wasn't just a matter of dunking things into water and calling it a day. No, you had to balance temperatures, soak fabrics, and treat stains with whatever odd concoctions were available: ashes, clay, or even the infamous urine bleach. The latter makes you scrunch your nose just thinking about it. Some historians still argue whether housemaids like you had to personally collect this stuff from jars on the street. It's not exactly the glamorous image you'd find in a marble statue, is it? While the water heats, you prepare your tools: wooden paddles, rough brushes made from plant fibers, and a pile of smooth stones used to pound out dirt. Your hands already ache just glancing at them. You wish you had gloves, but those aren't part of your reality. Instead, you rub a dab of olive oil into your palms, an improvised trick you learned from an older maid who swore by it. Quirky? Yes. Effective? Somewhat. At least it keeps your skin from cracking like the forum tiles in midsummer. As you crouch down to scrub a tunic, the smell of wet wool hits you, a heavy, musky odor that lingers no matter how hard you rinse. There's something oddly soothing about the repetitive motion of scrubbing, though. Dip, rub, rinse, repeat. The rhythm almost feels like a chant, a meditative hum that keeps you from thinking too hard about how many tunics await you. You wonder briefly if Roman philosophers ever wrote anything about the spiritual enlightenment of washing other people's clothes. Probably not. They were too busy debating the nature of the cosmos while someone like you cleaned their tunics. Every so often, another maid from a neighboring house appears, carrying her own stack of linens. She gives you a sympathetic nod. There's a sort of unspoken camaraderie among laundry workers, a shared understanding that no matter how much the empire expands, someone has to wash the emperor's socks. The two of you exchange gossip while working, voices low and conspiratorial. Apparently, the senator across the street threw a fit last night because his toga wasn't folded correctly. It's always something trivial, isn't it? The higher their rank, the stranger their demands. The water cools quickly, and you find yourself plunging your hands into the cold, almost numb temperature, scrubbing as fast as possible before your fingers stiffen. There's an art to it, really knowing just how much pressure to use, when to switch to a brush, and when to admit defeat against an especially stubborn wine stain. You mutter under your breath, "Who drinks that much Falernian wine and doesn't expect spills?" The tunic doesn't answer, but you swear it mocks you with its crimson blotches. By mid-morning you're sweating again, but not from the sun. It's the endless lifting and pounding of fabric. Your shoulders protest every movement, and you can feel your back threatening to give up. Still, you keep going, humming a tune you half remember from a street musician. You wonder if ancient Rome ever invented a device that could automate this misery. Historians debate whether early washing contraptions existed, but as far as you can tell, your own 2 arms are the only technology available today. A sudden clatter breaks your rhythm. It's the steward of the household, striding in like he owns the place. Well, technically, he kind of does. He checks the water level with a raised eyebrow and scolds you for wasting it. You bite your tongue to avoid a sarcastic retort. Of course, it's always your fault when the water is low, never mind the fact that you're the one fetching and heating every drop. You nod politely, all the while picturing the smug steward trying to carry an amphora up 3 flights of stairs. He wouldn't last 10 minutes. The laundry pile, however, doesn't care about your little victories. It just sits there, like a smug mountain of damp fabric, waiting for you to conquer it. You sigh and plunge your hands back into the soapy water, determined to beat this day into submission. Outside, the city hums with life merchants calling out prices, children chasing each other through narrow alleys, and somewhere, a distant flute plays a haunting tune. It's almost beautiful if you ignore the fact that you're elbow deep in grey water. As you wring out another tunic, you think about all the tiny details of this life, how every fold, every stitch, every drop of water carries the weight of an empire that relies on people like you. And yet, nobody writes ballads about the noble housemaid. Well, maybe one day someone will. For now, you just have to keep scrubbing, because those tunics aren't going to clean themselves. You're starting to think the tunics have formed a conspiracy. No matter how many you scrub, rinse and wring, there's always another one lurking at the bottom of the basket, smirking at you like it knows your fate. You take a deep breath and remind yourself that the ancient Romans didn't even have proper soap the way we think of it today. Instead, they relied on a mixture of ashes and animal fat to create a basic lye solution. You dip your hands into the grayish mixture, feeling its slippery texture, and wonder if you'll smell like a campfire for the rest of your life. The answer is probably yes. There's a jar of whitening solution nearby, if you can call it that. Some swear by a formula that involves soaking clothes in stale urine to get them really bright and stain-free. You hesitate, nose wrinkling, every time you think about using it. It's hard to feel elegant or noble when you're dunking someone's toga into a bucket of the city's worst smells. Yet, this trick was considered perfectly normal in Roman times. Historians still argue about whether this was a daily practice for household maids like you, or more common in commercial Philonike, the laundry workshops scattered around the city. Either way, you can't unknow that fact. Now, congratulations, you're officially in the elite club of people who handle laundry and questionable liquids for a living. You grab a particularly dirty tunic, stained with both wine and olive oil, a classic combination after a Roman feast. As you scrub, you imagine the scene that led to this mess. The master of the house gesturing wildly at dinner, spilling half his goblet while ranting about politics or gladiator matches. He doesn't care who cleans up afterward, of course. That's your job, invisible and constant. Your hands work automatically, scrubbing in circles, while your mind drifts to the thought of a warm bath that you probably won't have time for today, or tomorrow, or ever. The courtyard around you is alive with sound. Pigeons flutter on the roof tiles, cooing like they own the place. A neighbor yells at her children to stop throwing figs over the wall. Somewhere in the distance, a vendor calls out the price of fresh dates, his voice echoing like a morning bell. You wonder how many people in this city wake up to the same endless tasks as you, probably thousands, maybe tens of thousands. A whole invisible army of housemaids, slaves, and workers who keep Rome's golden facade from crumbling. As the tunics soak, you prepare the ash-based soap for the next round of scrubbing. It's a strange mix of science and improvisation, too much ash, and the fabric feels rough, too little, and the stains laugh in your face. You remember an old rumor that some Roman households used goat's milk mixed with ashes for delicate fabrics. Supposedly, it softened the wool and gave it a faintly pleasant smell. You're tempted to try it, but the cook will murder you if you steal from the kitchen's milk supply again. She's still angry about the last time, when you borrowed a bit of olive oil to polish a wine stain. Your arms are sore, but you keep scrubbing. The rhythm is hypnotic. Splash, rub, slap the fabric against the stone, repeat. It's almost musical, like a primitive drum beat echoing across the courtyard. You hum along, a soft tune that no one else will hear. This is your quiet rebellion, your way of turning mundane chores into a kind of ritual. If you're going to be stuck scrubbing tunics all day, you might as well make it feel like a performance. Occasionally, a curious passerby peeks into the courtyard, glancing at you and your growing line of drying laundry. They probably don't think twice about the effort behind those crisp, clean garments. People admire the beauty of a Roman toga without realizing it takes a small miracle and a lot of ash to keep it looking pristine. You mutter, "Maybe I should sign my name on every toga I wash. Then they'd know who really keeps them looking like respectable citizens." One quirky fact that crosses your mind: some wealthy Romans supposedly scented their clothes with exotic perfumes, rubbing crushed herbs or flowers into the fabric. It sounds fancy, but for you, that just means one more step in the process. The mistress of the house has a small jar of imported rose oil she insists on using for her favorite stola. It smells divine, But you can't help but think of the irony. Here you are, half covered in grey soap water, while her clothes smell like a blooming garden in spring. If only you could trade places for just one evening, lounging at a dinner party while someone else does the scrubbing. As the sun climbs higher, you take a break to stretch your back. You lean against the cool wall, letting your arms dangle at your sides. For a brief moment, you imagine what it would be like to live a life without buckets and ashes. Maybe you'd work at a little market stall, selling olives and figs, with no one ordering you to bleach their garments. You'd talk to customers, haggle over prices, and maybe just maybe sleep past dawn. Then you laugh quietly to yourself. Dreaming doesn't get the laundry done. Your break is short-lived because the next round of tunics is ready to be rinsed. You splash your hands into the cold water, shivering a little as the chill bites your skin. It's a small reminder that, despite the empire's grandeur, life for most people is a cycle of simple, tiring tasks. Rome may have roads, aqueducts, and colosseums, but you have piles of damp laundry and a stomach growling for a snack. Still, there's something oddly satisfying about seeing the transformation, a stained, grimy tunic turned into a soft, clean garment that looks almost new. You line them up to dry, watching the water drip slowly from their hems. It's your own quiet victory. Sure, nobody writes epic poetry about laundry day, but in your world, each clean tunic feels like a small triumph against chaos. By mid-morning, the courtyard becomes your personal amphitheater of gossip. As you carry another stack of damp tunics toward the drying racks, you catch sight of two other maids from neighboring houses heading to the Folonica, the communal laundry area. They wave at you with the kind of camaraderie that only comes from shared misery. You decide to take a quick detour and join them because, let's be honest, nothing fuels the spirit like a good bit of gossip while your hands prune from endless scrubbing. The Folonica is already bustling. Large vats of water, mixed with a questionable cocktail of ash, clay, and yasurine, bubble gently as workers stomp fabrics like they're treading grapes for wine. The sound is rhythmic, almost comical. You step up to your usual spot, a flat stone worn smooth from years of pounding tunics against it, and nod at an older woman whose hands look like they've been permanently bleached. She grins, offering you a tidbit of scandal before you can even open your mouth. Apparently, a merchant's wife was spotted slipping coins to a young gladiator at the market. You pretend to look shocked, but really, you're thinking, good for her. The conversations here are as much a part of the job as the scrubbing itself. Did you hear about the senator's banquet? One maid asks, her voice rising above the splash of water. They say he hired 10 dancers and released a white peacock in the atrium for good luck. You raise an eyebrow and shake your head. These rich folks are living in a different universe, and yet you're the one cleaning their linens afterward. It's almost laughable if you weren't so busy elbow-deep in soap water. As you pound a tunic against the stone, the rhythmic thuds blend with the chatter around you. A younger girl leans in, whispering, "Did you know that the Folonica workers sometimes sneak a splash of wine into the wash for special garments? Makes them smell sweeter?" You snort. "Or maybe it's just a way to steal a sip when no one's looking," you joke. Everyone chuckles, and for a moment the hard work feels lighter. This is your break room, your social club, and your therapy session all rolled into one. There's an art to balancing gossip and work, though. The overseer, a burly man with arms like tree trunks, keeps a hawk eye on the workers. He claims that too much talking slows the process, but everyone knows he secretly enjoys the juicy stories too. You see him smirking when someone mentions the emperor's rumored new mistress. Rome may be the center of the world, but apparently it's also one giant rumor mill. While you scrub, you think about how much of this job is communal. Sure, you could wash garments back at the house, but the Folonica offers more than vats of water. It offers news, laughter, and an occasional sense of belonging. You overhear someone debating whether the emperor himself sends his linens here or if he has a private team of full-time launderers. Historians still argue about that one. Some believe even the elite relied on these places for specialized treatments, like bleaching and pressing. It makes you feel slightly better to imagine that somewhere another maid is scrubbing imperial tunics and complaining just like you. One quirky fact you learned today. Apparently, some households add crushed chalk to their wash to brighten whites. It sounds absurd, but considering the alternative is more urine, chalk suddenly feels like luxury. You mentally note to ask your mistress for chalk next time. She'll probably roll her eyes, but hey, if she wants her stola to shine at the next dinner party, she'll listen. The air in the Folonica is thick with steam and the smell of wet wool. It's not exactly pleasant, but you've grown immune to it. What you haven't grown immune to is the constant lifting, wringing, and twisting of fabric. Your shoulders ache and your hands are starting to feel like they belong to someone twice your age. Still, you press on. There's a strange sense of pride that comes from watching a grimy tunic transform into something almost respectable. It's a small victory, but it's yours. As the sun climbs higher, a light breeze flutters through the courtyard, rustling the rows of drying garments like flags in a silent parade. You pause for a moment, taking in the sight. It's oddly beautiful, all those linens swaying in unison, catching the sunlight like they're made of gold instead of plain wool. You smile, wiping a bead of sweat from your brow, and think, maybe laundry isn't so bad when you look at it the right way. A loud laugh from one of the older maids snaps you out of your daydream. You look like you're about to compose a poem about dirty tunics, she teases. You laugh along, shaking your head. Only if it rhymes with my aching back, you reply, earning a chorus of chuckles. It's these little moments, the jokes, the shared grumbles that make the day bearable. Before leaving the Folonica, you hang the last of your freshly washed tunics and give them a final pat, like you're tucking them in for a nap. Then you gather your tools and say goodbye to your fellow maids. Same time tomorrow, one of them calls. You nod with a half smile. Same time, same gossip, same endless mountain of fabric. On your way back to the house, you carry the lighter load of freshly cleaned garments with a strange sense of accomplishment. Yes, your arms are jelly, your hair is sticking out at odd angles, and you smell faintly like wet ashes. But for a brief moment, under the warm Roman sun, you feel like a small cog turning the great wheel of the empire, and somehow, that doesn't seem so bad. The walk back to the house feels like a victory march, with the freshly washed tunics draped over your arm like battle flags. You glance at them and think, well, at least they look cleaner than I feel. The courtyard greets you with a blast of midday sunlight that makes you squint. You can already feel the sun's warmth settling over the city, baking the terracotta rooftops and filling the air with the mingled smells of dust, bread, and something suspiciously fishy from the fishmonger's stall nearby. But there's no time to dwell on scents. You've got to start bleaching the garments while the sun is still high. You spread the wet tunics across a wooden frame in the courtyard, smoothing them out with the practiced hands of someone who has done this 1,000 times. The sun, after all, is your most reliable ally when it comes to whitening clothes. Roman bleaching methods were simple but effective. Lay the fabric out on grassy hillsides or wooden racks, occasionally sprinkling it with water or vinegar to activate the lye residue from the ash soap. As you work, you hum under your breath, something soft and tuneless, blending with the buzz of cicadas in the distance. A curious neighbor leans over the wall, watching you stretch the garments with all the precision of a craftsman. Trying to make them shine like the emperor's toga, she teases. You grin. If the emperor's toga smelled like goat fat and ash water, then yes, exactly like that. She chuckles and shakes her head, disappearing back into her house. It's these small, ridiculous moments that give your day just enough humor to keep moving forward. The sun beats down on your back as you adjust the last tunic, pulling it taut so it will dry without wrinkles. It's a skill, really, knowing just how much to stretch wool or linen before it warps. Historians still argue whether Roman maids used wooden pins or weights to keep garments from blowing away. You've tried both methods. Pins are better, but the weights make you feel like you're anchoring down sails on some tiny laundry ship. Today, the breeze is light, so you opt for pins, carefully clipping them along the edges. As you step back to admire your handiwork, you notice a patch of stubborn discoloration on one of the linen towels. You sigh. Out comes the secret weapon, a mix of vinegar and clay paste. It's messy, smells awful, but it works more often than not. You smear it over the stain, muttering, "There's no stain too proud for me." The towel doesn't respond, but you swear it looks smug anyway. One of these days, you're going to win the war against stubborn fabric stains and declare yourself a hero. By now, the heat is intensifying. The courtyard is like an oven, and you feel sweat trickle down your spine. You take a quick break, plopping yourself down on an overturned bucket, and watch the sunlight shimmer on the drying fabric. It's oddly mesmerizing, those rippling whites glowing brighter with every passing minute. For a fleeting second, you almost feel like a magician, turning dirty tunics into something fresh and new. Too bad no one writes ballads about the enchantress of bleach. While you sit there, the household cat, because of course there's a cat, saunters into the courtyard and plops itself right on the edge of a drying sheet. Really? You groan, shooing it away gently. The cat gives you that infamous feline glare, as if to say, "How dare you?" You roll your eyes. "Listen, you don't see me shedding fur on your food bowl." The cat remains unimpressed and stalks off, tail swishing. Refreshed from your short break, you grab a small pot of rosemary water from the kitchen. The mistress insists on spritzing her garments with this aromatic rinse, claiming it wards off bad humors and gives the fabric a luxurious scent. You're not sure about the humors, but it does smell nice. You sprinkle the water lightly over the drying clothes, inhaling the faint herbal aroma. It's one of those little touches that make the difference between decent laundry and laundry worthy of a Roman matron. The sun does its job well. As you flip the garments to ensure even bleaching, you find yourself zoning out, lulled by the quiet rustling of fabric in the breeze. Your mind wanders to the hills beyond the city walls, where vineyards stretch under the same sun. Do vineyard workers feel this same bone-deep tiredness at noon? Do they complain about grape stains the way you complain about wine stains? Probably. A sudden shout from the kitchen breaks your thoughts. The cook, waving a ladle like it's a sword, calls for someone to fetch more firewood. You pretend not to hear. Surely someone else can handle that task after all. You've got your own battlefield here. Still, her voice echoes through the house like a trumpet call. You glance at the drying laundry, debating whether you have 5 spare minutes to grab a bundle of wood from the alleyway. You sigh. Of course you'll do it. It's not like anyone else will. Before you leave, you check the garments one more time. The sun is bleaching them beautifully, turning dull grays into a soft, warm white. It's satisfying, in its own quiet way, to see tangible results. You gather your energy, grab the empty firewood basket, and head toward the side gate. As you step out, you look back at the rows of drying clothes, swaying like ghostly banners in the midday light. It's a strangely comforting sight, a reminder that even in the chaos of a Roman household, there are moments of order and beauty. The heat is relentless, but so are you. With each chore completed, you carve out a tiny victory, a small piece of control in a world that often feels overwhelming. And as you hold the firewood back, sweat dripping from your temples, you think to yourself, if I survive today's bleaching marathon, I deserve an extra loaf of bread tonight. Back in the courtyard, the sun has baked the tunics to near perfection. They hang there, fluttering gently in the breeze, like the togas of ghostly senators debating over laundry policy. You carefully unpin each one, feeling the warmth radiating off the fabric as if it's been storing up sunlight just for you. There's a quiet satisfaction in this process, like peeling cookies off a baking sheet, but with the added bonus of slightly fewer calories burned and significantly more sweat involved. Inside, you set up your folding station on a low wooden bench. The pile of garments looms large, and you sigh as you pick up the first tunic, its coarse wool scratchy against your fingers. Folding these things is both an art and a mental puzzle. One wrong crease and the mistress will scowl as if you've insulted the gods themselves. Roman households took clothing seriously after all. Garments were not cheap. A toga could cost more than a month's wages for some people, and keeping it in good shape was like maintaining a prized horse. Historians still argue whether household maids had a strict folding code, but from the look of your mistress's hawk-like gaze, you're inclined to believe they did. You spread a large toga over the bench, smoothing out the fabric with deliberate care. This one is heavy, a thick wool piece reserved for special occasions. It carries a faint aroma of last night's garam sauce, which makes your nose wrinkle. You're tempted to complain, but you know better. Instead, you dab a bit of rosemary water along the edges, hoping the scent of herbs will overpower the fishiness. As you fold, you imagine the toga's story at dinner party, probably, with much gesturing and someone spilling wine in the heat of a political argument. Your life may be unglamorous, but at least it's drama-free, unless you count the occasional rogue laundry stain. The tunics are easier, though not by much. These are the daily uniforms of Roman life, plain, functional, and endless. Each tunic feels like it carries a little piece of someone's day, from the dusty footprints of a trip to the forum to the faint whiff of olive oil from kitchen work. You smooth and fold them in quick succession, developing a rhythm that almost feels meditative. Dip, shake, fold, stack. It's like laundry yoga, except instead of inner peace, you get sore shoulders and a lingering sense that you missed a wrinkle. As you stack the folded garments, you can't help but muse on the difference between what people wear and what they think it says about them. The master's toga is supposed to scream dignity and power, but all you see is a fancy wool sheet that smells faintly like goat. Your own wool shift is rough and unremarkable, but at least it's practical. No tripping over layers of fabric when you're running after a loose chicken in the courtyard priorities, right? Halfway through the pile, you spot a small rip along the hem of a child's tunic. It's nothing major, but if you don't fix it now, you'll get the dreaded, "How could you miss this?" look from the mistress. You grab a needle and some coarse thread, your fingers already aching from the morning's scrubbing. Stitch by stitch, you repair the tear, imagining what it would be like if sewing counted as an Olympic sport. You'd probably win a bronze medal, at least assuming the gold went to someone who could fix a toga blindfolded. Quirky tip of the day? Some maids swear by using beeswax on their thread to make stitching smoother. You tried it once and accidentally got wax all over your lap. Lesson learned. Leave the bees to the honey. Still, it's little tricks like these that keep the household running smoothly. No one celebrates them, but everyone relies on them. You think, with a wry smile, that if all the maids in Rome went on strike tomorrow, the city would collapse faster than a poorly built amphitheater. The household bustles around you as you work. The master's voice echoes from another room, complaining about the cost of imported spices. The cook is muttering something about burnt bread, and the children are laughing as they chase each other with reeds. You glance up from your folding, briefly envious of their carefree energy. But then again, who wants to be chased around by screaming kids while you're trying to enjoy a piece of bread? Maybe folding tunics isn't so bad. As the pile of folded garments grows, so does your sense of relief. You line them up in neat stacks, feeling a small spark of pride. For all the sweat and aching muscles, there's a strange satisfaction in creating order out of chaos. You even consider adding a fancy little twist to one of the folds, just to see if the mistress notices. Then you think better of it. Artistic expression is rarely appreciated in laundry work. By late afternoon, the laundry is stacked, stitched, and perfumed to perfection. You sit back on your bench, rolling your shoulders to loosen the knots of tension. The day is far from over dinner prep, more cleaning, and probably some mopping await you, but at least this battle is won. You glance at the clean, crisp garments and allow yourself a quiet smile. If only the rest of life could be folded so neatly. Somewhere in the distance, a street musician plays a slow, mournful tune on his flute. It drifts over the rooftops, mingling with the smell of fresh bread and olive oil. For just a moment, you close your eyes, letting the music carry you away. It's not much, but it's enough to remind you that even in a life of endless laundry, there are tiny, beautiful pauses worth savoring. Just when you think the laundry battle is behind you, the stains of empire make their grand entrance. There's a fresh pile of garments waiting for you, tunic sleeves stiff with dried wine, tablecloth splattered with garum sauce, and of course, the master's ceremonial cloak with a suspicious smear that could be either grape juice or blood from last night's dice game gone wrong. You pinch the fabric with 2 fingers, holding it at arm's length like it's some kind of evidence in a crime scene. Why does no one ever spill plain water? You haul the stained items to your washing station and start triaging them like a battlefield medic. The red stains are the worst. They soak in like stubborn gossip and refuse to budge no matter how much scrubbing you do. Roman feasts are notorious for leaving behind these colorful scars. Last night's banquet featured roasted boar, pomegranates, and enough wine to drown a small province. Judging by the state of the linens, the guests were more interested in sword fighting with forks than keeping their togas clean. Historians still argue whether these extravagant meals were more about food or flaunting wealth, but you're convinced they were simply stain-producing contests with you as the unlucky referee. You start with the wine stains, soaking them in a concoction of warm water, vinegar, and a pinch of ash. You press the fabric against a smooth stone, rubbing it in small circles until your fingers ache. The smell of vinegar is sharp, stinging your nose, but it works better than anything else you've tried. Sometimes you wonder how many other maids across Rome are hunched over the same task right now, muttering curses at wealthy patrons and their sloppy dining habits. Next up is the garum saucia fermented fish delicacy that might taste divine but smells like a crime scene when left on linen overnight. You roll your eyes as you scrub, muttering, honestly, who thought fish paste and white fabric were a good combination? The cat, lounging nearby, twitches its ears but offers no wisdom. Instead, it watches you with that smug look cats always have, as if it's thinking, you know, I'd never spill garum. I'm too refined for that. To tackle the stubborn grease stains, you grab your secret stash of river clay. It's not exactly perfume grade, but it works wonders on oily spots. You smear a thin layer over the affected areas, rubbing gently with your fingers. The clay feels cool and grainy, a strangely satisfying texture that almost makes the chore bearable. Almost. You leave it to sit in the sun for a while, letting the natural heat work its magic. Watching the stains fade slowly but surely feels like witnessing a tiny miracle. It's the closest thing to wizardry you'll perform today. You pause for a moment, stretching your arms and massaging your sore wrists. There's something oddly reflective about stain removal. Every blotch tells a story: a drunken toast gone wrong, a dropped fig, or maybe a child's messy attempt to sneak extra honey cakes. If someone studied these stains, they could probably reconstruct entire dinner conversations. Maybe that's why you like this part of the job. It's like piecing together the puzzle of a household's life, one blotch at a time. A quirky tidbit you heard once crosses your mind. Some Romans believed that rubbing ashes mixed with goat's milk into fabric not only cleaned it, but also brought good fortune to the wearer. You can't confirm the luck part, but you imagine the master would gladly believe anything if it meant avoiding stains during his next feast. Perhaps you should start charging extra for blessed laundry. The afternoon sun grows hotter, baking the courtyard and drying your patience. You take a break by the fountain, splashing cool water on your face and arms. The sound of the water trickling from the carved lion's mouth is soothing, almost hypnotic. You lean against the fountain's rim, letting your thoughts drift to simpler times like when you were a child, running barefoot in the fields, blissfully unaware that one day you'd become a professional stain warrior. Your break is interrupted by the arrival of the steward, holding another pile of stained napkins with an expression that says, "You missed a spot." You bite back a sigh and take the fabric, muttering a cheerful, "Thank you," through clenched teeth. If sarcasm were a recognized language, you'd be fluent by now. Back at your station, you tackle the final stains with renewed determination. The rhythmic scrubbing, the splashing of water, the sun warming your back, it all blurs into a strangely satisfying flow. You hum a little tune to keep your mind occupied, something you picked up from a street musician near the forum. Music makes even the toughest chores feel less like punishment and more like, well, slightly nicer punishment. By the time you finish, the worst of the stains have surrendered. You hang the linens and tunics on the drying line, stepping back to admire your handiwork. They look almost new, glowing under the sunlight like trophies from a hard-fought battle. You exhale, feeling a mix of exhaustion and pride. These clothes might not belong to you, but their cleanliness is your invisible signature, proof that your day wasn't wasted. As you clean your hands, you notice the clay residue stuck under your nails, a reminder of your quiet victories. You smile to yourself. Maybe the empire runs on politics, armies, and trade, but behind the scenes, it also runs on the unsung heroics of people like you, wielding buckets and brushes instead of swords. And honestly, that's a kind of power too. By late afternoon, the household begins to hum like a hive, preparing for evening chaos. You've barely finished hanging the last of the clean tunics when the steward appears again, his arms crossed like a marble statue that learned how to nag. "The mistress will inspect the linens shortly," he says, his tone implying that you should consider this a sacred ritual. You nod, already knowing the drill. She'll run her fingers over every hem, tilt her head as though assessing fine art, and point out the one wrinkle that escaped your meticulous folding. Fun times. The household hierarchy is a world unto itself. At the top sits the mistress, a woman whose wardrobe alone could fill half the Colosseum, or so it feels. Her voice is sharp but polite, the kind of tone that can compliment and criticize you in the same breath. You once overheard her telling a guest that a household is only as respectable as its laundry. If that's true, you're the foundation holding up her entire reputation, though somehow she never says thank you for that. Historians still argue whether women in Roman households held true power or just wielded influence behind the scenes. From where you're standing, It's clear they run the show just with silk gloves. Below her, there's the steward, a man who considers himself the commander of all domestic matters. He loves to count things: towels, cups, cushions, nothing escapes his obsessive tally. Sometimes you think he spends more time counting laundry than you do washing it. His favorite pastime is finding faults. This napkin is folded incorrectly. That tunic smells faintly of vinegar. You smile and nod, pretending to care while imagining what would happen if he ever tried scrubbing out garum stains with his delicate hands. Spoiler, he'd cry. Then, of course, there's you and the rest of the invisible crewmaids, kitchen boys, and errand runners who keep the household from descending into chaos. It's like being part of a small army, except instead of swords, you have buckets and brooms. Every day is a campaign, conquering dirt, banishing stains, and trying not to trip over the cat, who seems to think it owns every sunlit corner of the courtyard. Today, the mistress glides into the courtyard for her inspection, wearing a pale green stola that smells faintly of roses. She looks over the drying linens with the air of a general reviewing troops. "Much better than last time," she says, barely glancing at you, though that one tunic seems a little limp. You resist the urge to roll your eyes. Limp? It's a tunic, not a soldier. Instead, you bow slightly and promise to give it extra attention. Inside your head you add, "Maybe I'll give it a motivational speech while I'm at it." As she leaves, the steward whispers, "Don't forget to press the master's favorite toga before dinner. He hates creases." Oh, of course, how dare a piece of fabric have creases, especially one that's been twisted like an origami project all morning. You grab the bronze smoothing paddle, an early form of ironing, and get to work. Heating the paddle over the coals is tricky. You need it warm enough to press folds, but not so hot it scorches the fabric. It's like playing a never-ending game of guess that temperature, except the stakes are your sanity. The master of the house pops his head into the courtyard just as you're finishing. He's dressed casually well, casually for a Roman aristocrat, which still means fabrics you can't afford to touch on your best day. He grumbles about a meeting in the forum and mutters something about toga pleats being a reflection of dignity. You want to tell him that dignity is overrated when you're sweating over wool, but instead, you smile and nod again, always nodding. A funny thought crosses your mind. If the fate of the Roman Empire ever came down to the crease in a toga, you'd probably be hailed as a national hero. Imagine the statues to the unsung maid who folded Rome's future. You chuckle softly at the absurdity of it, but keep smoothing the fabric until it's as crisp as a summer morning. Meanwhile, the kitchen is a storm of activity. The cook yells orders like a gladiator trainer, pots clanging and the smell of roasting meat drifting through the house. You know that in just a few hours, the dining hall will transform into a battlefield of food, wine, and careless spills, all of which will end up back in your laundry pile. You sigh at the thought. The cycle never ends. Quirky tidbit of the day: some historians believe that Roman mistresses secretly competed with their neighbors over who had the whitest linens. It was a sign of wealth and good management. You picture the mistress standing by the courtyard wall, peeking over to see if the lady next door's sheets are whiter. Maybe you should just throw chalk dust on everything and declare victory. As the sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the courtyard, you finish pressing the last garment and stack it neatly for inspection. Your back aches, your arms feel like lead, and yet there's a strange satisfaction in knowing the household will look immaculate for the evening. You glance at the gleaming togas and think, for all their talk of power and wealth, they'd be lost without people like me. The cat jumps onto the bench beside you, rubbing its head against your elbow as if to say, "Good job, human." You scratch behind its ears, smiling. At least someone appreciates your work. The evening bell rings in the distance, signaling the next wave of chores. You take a deep breath, stretch your sore muscles, and prepare for the chaos that dinner will bring. Clean linens may be your daily triumph, but you know the real storm is just beginning. Just as you're about to sneak a quick sip of water, the steward barges in again, announcing that the evening preparations have started. Of course, this means the kitchen is about to transform into a chaotic carnival of smells, spills, and last-minute disasters. You decide to grab a few minutes of peace before stepping into the madness, mentally bracing yourself for the marathon ahead. But then you remember one of the few perks of this job: your growing arsenal of sneaky shortcuts. You head to your secret corner in the storage room where you keep your laundry survival kit. Inside a small clay pot, you've hidden some powdered river clay mixed with crushed rosemary. It's your magic blend for freshening up fabrics that don't have time for a full scrub. A quick dab here, a sprinkle there, and suddenly a tunic looks like it spent all day soaking under the sun. The mistress thinks you have an eye for quality. You're not about to reveal that half the magic comes from hiding stains with a strategically placed fold. One trick you learned from an older maid is using river clay as a softener. Wool tunics can feel like sandpaper against the skin if you're not careful, so you rub a thin layer of clay into the fabric before rinsing it out. It leaves the fibers softer and even gives them a pleasant, earthy smell. Of course, the master would have a fit if he knew you were rubbing dirt on his clothes. She'd call it barbaric. Historians still debate whether maids like you were allowed such improvisations or if every technique had to be approved by the household steward. If that's true, you're basically a rebel with a laundry basket. You also have a tiny stash of scented oils you borrowed from the bathhouse once. Nothing fancy, just a mix of lavender and myrtle, but a single drop on the hems of the mistress's stola earns you at least a half smile of approval. You've become an expert at making a little luxury go a long way. One drop for the mistress, one drop for the master's toga, and maybe, just maybe, one drop on your own rough shift when no one's looking. It's like giving yourself a small secret hug. As you set about prepping the garments for tonight's dinner party, you can't help but think of all the shortcuts you'd love to invent if time and resources weren't an issue. A self-cleaning toga? A stain-resistant tunic? Or maybe a magical cloth that folds itself? You chuckle at the idea. If only the great Roman inventors spent less time on aqueducts and more time on laundry, you'd have a lot fewer headaches. While you're busy with your tricks, the kitchen erupts in its usual evening frenzy. The cook is shouting orders, the aroma of roasting meat mixing with the sweet scent of honey cakes. A kitchen boy runs past you, carrying a tray of dates, only to trip and spill half of them across the floor. You sigh, grab a rag, and start wiping up the mess before someone blames you for the sticky footprints that will inevitably appear. In the background, you hear a faint tune from a flute player in the street, mingling oddly with the chaos inside the house. The mistress peeks in to check on the stola you've just finished. She picks it up, sniffs it, and raises an eyebrow. "Is that myrtle I smell?" she asks. You nod, trying to look as innocent as possible. She smiles, a rare moment of approval. "Good choice. My guests will notice." You breathe a sigh of relief on point for the sneaky maid and her stolen bath oils. Sometimes you wonder if the other servants also have their secret hacks. You wouldn't be surprised. After all, survival in a Roman household is about more than just following orders. It's about knowing when to bend them. Maybe the cook hides a stash of rare spices for special occasions, or the stable boy knows a trick for making the master's horse look more impressive than it really is. You're all just improvising, trying to keep the household machine running smoothly. A quirky rumor you heard once drifts back to you apparently. Some maids would deliberately scent the master's cloak with subtle herbs like thyme and sage, claiming it attracted good fortune during public appearances. Whether it works or not, you suspect the senators would probably appreciate the fragrance after spending a day sweating under the Italian sun. As the evening shadows lengthen, you tidy up your tools and give the garments a final once-over. The dinner party will soon begin, and you know the guests will never think twice about the effort behind every crisp fold and subtle scent. They'll eat, drink, laugh, and spill all over again. And when they're done, you'll be right back here, scrubbing and muttering about the stains of the elite. Still, there's a strange satisfaction in these small victories, the tricks, the hacks, the quiet rebellions that make your day just a little easier. You pat the finished pile of tunics with a smirk, thinking, if only they knew the magic behind their spotless garments. A bell rings, signaling the guest's arrival. You take one last breath of the warm lavender-tinged air and brace yourself for the whirlwind that's about to hit. Dinner parties in this house are like miniature battles, loud, messy, and guaranteed to leave behind enough stains to fill tomorrow's washing buckets. The first sign of the evening rush is the distant echo of footsteps, lots of theme on the marble floor. Guests are arriving, and with them comes the unspoken promise of chaos. You can already picture the aftermath. Wine spilled on white linens, greasy fingerprints smudging the edges of napkins, and crumbs everywhere like a culinary battlefield. You straighten your aching back, roll your shoulders, and get to work. The goal now is to stay one step ahead of the disaster, like a soldier preparing for a siege. The dining hall is beautiful in that over-the-top Roman kind of way gleaming bronze lamps, mosaics of mythical creatures, and a long table laid out like a shrine to indulgence. You run a final check on the table linens, making sure they're perfectly smooth, no creases in sight. The steward hovers nearby, nodding solemnly as if you're setting up an altar to the gods of etiquette. You half expect him to start chanting, "May the folds be sharp and the stains stay away." The guests arrive in a swirl of silk, perfume, and loud conversation. They recline on couches, nibbling dates and figs, and you immediately know this will not end well for the laundry. The master lifts his goblet, gesturing dramatically while talking about politics or gladiator matches you lose track because you're too busy watching the wine slosh dangerously close to the edge. One tiny miscalculation, and tomorrow you'll be scrubbing out purple stains for hours. Dinner service is a chaotic dance, and you're part of the silent, background crew making it look effortless. You rush between the kitchen and dining hall, balancing trays of roasted vegetables and honey-glazed pastries. The cook barks orders like a general on the battlefield. More sauce on the boar. Don't forget the pine nut topping. Meanwhile, you're dodging guests' reclining elbows and trying not to spill anything on the pristine linens you worked so hard to bleach earlier. Sure enough, disaster strikes. A goblet tips over, sending a waterfall of wine cascading across the table. You swoop in with a cloth like a seasoned warrior, dabbing and blotting before the stain can settle. One guest chuckles. Ah, the true hero of the feast. You force a polite smile, but in your head you're thinking, this isn't heroism, it's laundry triage. Historians still argue whether Roman dinner parties were more about the food or the display of wealth. From where you stand, it's definitely the latter. The dishes are elaborate stuffed dormice, spiced fish, honey cakes, and each one seems specifically designed to leave an impossible stain. You catch yourself staring at the oily sheen on a serving platter, mentally calculating how much ash soap it will take to undo the damage later. In a brief lull, you retreat to the corner of the room, watching the scene unfold. The laughter, the clinking of cups, the flicker of lamplight on bronze bowl sits almost mesmerizing. But then you spot a guest wiping his greasy hands on one of the napkins, and the spell breaks. You silently mourn the napkin's fate and make a mental note to soak it overnight. One quirky tidbit you overheard earlier. Some Romans believed that dining stains were a sign of a life well lived, proof that you enjoyed your meal to the fullest. You can't help but scoff at that idea. If stains are a badge of honor, you're basically the empire's unsung war hero. Maybe you should start signing the bottom of every cleaned napkin like an artist. The meal drags on, and so does your work. Every time you think the chaos has peaked, another round of food arrives. The smell of roasted boar mingles with the sweetness of honeyed fruit and the sharp tang of vinegar sauce. It's enough to make your stomach growl, but you're too busy wiping spills and ferrying trays to think about your own dinner. You'll be lucky if you get a scrap of leftover bread when this is over. By the time the main course is done, the table looks like a battlefield, crumbs scattered like debris, goblets tipped over like fallen soldiers, and sauce streaks marking the linen like scars. You begin your quiet cleanup, collecting plates and stacking them with the precision of a potter. The guests barely notice you, too caught up in their stories and laughter. It's as if the household runs on invisible hands your hands, and no one ever stops to see the effort. As the guests move on to the lounge for post-dinner wine, you sweep through the hall, gathering the worst of the laundry casualties. A napkin with a suspicious reddish blotch, a table runner that looks like it lost a battle with a jar of honey, and of course, the master's toga draped carelessly over the back of a couch. You sigh, shaking your head. It's going to be a long night. Back in the laundry corner, you start pre-soaking the worst offenders. The water turns murky almost immediately, swirling with wine and oil like some bizarre potion. You scrub gently at the edges of a linen napkin, muttering a soft curse at the guest who used it as a hand towel for greasy pork. At least the rhythmic motion of washing has a calming effect, almost like therapy, though one with significantly more elbow grease. You glance toward the dining hall where laughter still rings out. Enjoy it while it lasts, you think, because once the last guest leaves, the cleanup will begin in earnest, and you'll be right there in the trenches, conquering stains like the uncelebrated hero you are. The laughter from the dining hall grows louder as the wine flows freely, and you just know that every chuckle means another stain waiting for you. By the time you return with a fresh rag, The table looks like a map of Rome's culinary excess. Wine blotches like spilled ink, honey smears glistening under the lamplight, and a trail of breadcrumbs that could guide lost children through the house. You can almost hear the linens sighing, "Why us?" You give them a sympathetic glance and worry, your turn in the ash bath is coming. The cook bursts into the hall, balancing a tray of fresh honey cakes, while a kitchen boy follows with a jug of watered wine. The guests cheer like gladiators watching a victory parade. You hover nearby, your keen eyes scanning for trouble. Sure enough, one guest leans back a little too far, sending a cup teetering toward the edge. You swoop in with the reflexes of a seasoned warrior, catching it just before it spills onto the already battle-worn tablecloth. "Ah," the guest says with a wink, "you must be the fastest maid in Rome." You force a smile but can't resist muttering under your breath, "Fast enough to save your toga from disaster, sir." Dinner parties in Rome are less about eating and more about showing off. The guests brag about their estates, their horses, and their ability to recite poetry after 3 goblets of wine. You hear snippets of conversation as you wipe the edges of the table, a senator complaining about grain prices, another talking about the latest scandal in the forum, and someone whispering about a new gladiator who's the talk of the city. It's like being in the front row of the empire's gossip theater. If only someone would pay you for the insider news you gather while scrubbing plates. The table is a rotating stage of chaos. After the honey cakes, they bring out a plate of spiced figs drizzled with syrup. You brace yourself, knowing that syrup is your sworn enemy. The first spill happens within seconds, a sticky cascade of sweetness running down the edge of the table. You grab a damp cloth and attack it before it hardens into a sugary crust. The smell of the figs is intoxicating, and for a moment, your stomach growls in protest. You haven't eaten since dawn, and the kitchen's spare bread feels like a distant memory. Historians still debate whether household maids like you were allowed to taste the lavish dishes they served. Some say maids could sneak a bite if the master wasn't looking. Others insist that was strictly forbidden. You glance toward the kitchen and spot a kitchen boy sneaking a fig into his mouth. Lucky him. You, however, are stuck wiping syrup as if your life depends on it. As the evening stretches on, the dining hall becomes a blur of noise and movement. Guests recline on couches, some half asleep from too much wine, while others argue about politics with the passion of men who have never lifted a bucket of water in their lives. You stand in the corner for a moment, watching the scene with tired amusement. If these people had to scrub their own togas, you suspect Rome's politics would be far less dramatic. The cleanup begins even before the guests leave. You gather empty plates, stacking them carefully to avoid clattering, while another maid sweeps up fallen crumbs. The smell of roasted boar still lingers in the air, mingling with the sweetness of wine-soaked napkins. You can already tell which linens will need overnight soaking. One table runner looks like it's been through a minor war wine, honey, and maybe even a drop of olive oil, all competing for dominance. You mutter, "Congratulations, runner. You win tonight's most ruined award." As you work, you notice the mistress watching you from across the room. She gives a slight nod, a rare sign of approval. Maybe she saw how quickly you caught that falling goblet earlier. Or maybe she's just too tipsy to care. Either way, you'll take the silent compliment and run with it. Quirky detail of the night? One guest tries to impress everyone by showing how authentic. She dabs his greasy fingers on his toga and laughs, saying it's a sign of a good feast. You nearly choke on your own breath. Authentic? Try spending an hour with a brush and ash water, and we'll see how authentic you feel. You make a mental note to start charging for authentic Roman stain removal services. When the last dessert is served, you retreat to the kitchen to wash plates. The sink are large stone bassines filled with warm, soapy water, and you plunge your hands in, feeling the day's fatigue seep into your bones. Scrubbing plates might seem tedious, but compared to chasing rogue wine stains, it's almost peaceful. You focus on the rhythm. Scrub, rinse, stack. It's like a quiet dance no one notices. By the time the guests move to the atrium for post-dinner lounging, you've cleared most of the chaos from the dining table. The linens are bundled up, waiting for their next round of cleansing. You glance at the clock, a water clock, because Rome doesn't believe in sundials for indoor sansai. It's going to be a late night, but at least you've survived another dinner disaster. For now. The dining hall may be quiet now, but your chores are far from over. You gather the last of the soiled linens, shaking off crumbs and sighing at the stains that are already setting in. One particularly bold splash of red wine smirks at you like a battle scar. We'll see about that, you mutter, as you toss it into the laundry basket. As you trudge back to the courtyard, the cool night air brushes against your face, a welcome relief from the stifling warmth of the dining area. After scrubbing and bleaching everyone else's garments all day, your thoughts start drifting toward one forbidden luxury, the Roman baths. You can almost feel the steam rising from the caldarium, hear the soft lapping of warm water in the frigidarium, and smell the sharp scent of eucalyptus oil. For a fleeting moment, you imagine sneaking away for an hour, soaking your aching muscles while gossiping with other bathgoers about senators' scandals. Then reality taps you on the shoulder like a stern steward. Baths cost money, and servants like you don't exactly have bathhouse memberships. Historians still argue whether maids could freely enter public baths if they had the time, but judging from your life, the answer seems like a solid, not a chance. You begin pre-soaking the worst offenders from dinner, leaning over the wash basin as moonlight glints off the water. The courtyard is quieter now, save for the faint murmur of the street outside and the occasional croak of a distant frog near the aqueduct. It's almost peaceful, in a way just you, the cool night air, and a bucket of stubborn stains that need convincing. You rub ash soap along the edges of a linen napkin, whispering, "Don't fight me, just let go," as though the fabric might obey if you're polite enough. Sometimes you wonder if the Roman baths would even feel as magical as everyone claims. People talk about them like they're temples of relaxation, where the wealthy recline on marble benches while servants fan them with palm leaves. You imagine walking in with your worn wool shift, your hair smelling faintly of ash and vinegar, and every head turning to judge the laundry girl. The thought makes you laugh quietly. Maybe you're better off dreaming about it instead of actually going. One of the kitchen boys passes by, whistling a tune as he carries a stack of clean plates. "You should be at the baths," he teases. A soak in hot water and some scented oil, think how soft your hands would be. You hold up your raw, red fingers and smirk. At this point, I'd settle for warm water that doesn't smell like garum. He chuckles and vanishes back into the kitchen, leaving you alone with your thoughts. You pull out a small clay jar of scented oil, your own secret stash, acquired through a gift from a generous market vendor who owed you a favor. It's just a blend of lavender and crushed bay leaves, but you dab a little on your wrists. The soft fragrance lifts your mood, making the endless laundry feel less grim. If you close your eyes, you can almost pretend you're at the baths, listening to the echo of laughter bouncing off marble walls. As the stains begin to fade, you rinse the linens and hang them on the line. The moonlight catches on the wet fabric, making them shimmer like ghostly banners. You pause, watching the way the breeze flutters through the drying cloth. It's quiet, almost meditative, your own private version of a spa night. Sure, it involves a lot more scrubbing and a lot less soaking, but the stillness is soothing. A quirky fact you overheard in the marketplace comes to mind. Some wealthy Romans believed that adding rose petals to their bath water not only softened their skin, but also warded off evil spirits. You shake your head with a grin. If rose petals really had that power, you'd be sprinkling them on every toga you wash just to ward off the stains. The thought of a warm bath lingers as you finish your work. Maybe one day you'll save enough to treat yourself to a proper bathhouse visit. For now, you settle for splashing cool water on your face and hands, watching the ripples shimmer in the dim light. The simple act feels luxurious in its own small way. By the time you gather the last of the laundry, the household is winding down. The children have gone to bed, the mistress is sipping watered wine in the atrium, and the master is mumbling about tomorrow's meeting at the forum. You exhale, letting the quiet night wrap around you like a soft blanket. It's not the baths, but it's close enough for now. The city is different at night. As you carry the last bundle of damp linens to the drying rack, the usual daytime chaos fades into a softer hum. The street outside the courtyard is quiet, broken only by the occasional clop of a horse's hooves or the faint rattle of a cart heading back from the market. You pause for a moment, letting the cool air wash over your face, carrying hints of olive smoke, distant sea breeze, and a whisper of baked bread from a late-night bakery. It's a rare, fleeting calm, and you savor it like the last crumb of honey cake. You light the small oil lamps scattered around the courtyard. Their flickering glow bathes the linens in warm amber tones, turning them into a gallery of fluttering ghosts. As you fold a nearly dry sheet, You catch the sound of music a lyre, faint but clear drifting from a neighbor's house. It's a soothing melody, weaving through the night air like a lullaby. For a brief moment, you slow your pace, letting the rhythm of the music guide the fold of the cloth in your hands. The evening shift is slower, more deliberate. Each task feels like it belongs to another world, a softer, quieter Rome that emerges only after sunset. You spread out the larger linens over a wooden beam, smoothing them down while the cate's your self-appointed supervisor watches from a nearby windowsill. Its eyes glint in the lamplight, and you can almost hear its judgmental thoughts. Still folding? You really should be napping by now. You smile and whisper, "I'll nap when the empire falls," which, judging by your workload, might happen sooner than anyone expects. The quiet night also brings whispers of distant voices from the street. A poet, slightly drunk, recites verses to anyone who will listen, his voice rising and falling like a wave. You can't make out all the words, but the emotion in his tone is unmistakable love, longing, maybe a complaint about the price of wine. You roll your eyes with a smile. At least poets don't spill garum on your laundry. One of your favorite nighttime tasks is folding sheets. There's something satisfying about seeing a large, unruly piece of fabric transformed into a crisp, neat square. It's a kind of magic simple, invisible, but undeniably real. You move slowly, deliberately, enjoying the quiet swish of the fabric as it settles into place. Historians still argue whether Roman households prized perfectly folded linens as a sign of order, but you're convinced it's true. A neat stack of sheets is like a silent promise that the house is ready for whatever chaos tomorrow brings. As you work, the night grows cooler and the breeze picks up. You pull your wool shawl tighter around your shoulders, feeling the day's exhaustion sink into your bones. The moon peeks over the rooftops, bathing the courtyard in silver light. For a moment, everything feels still time, chores, even your own thoughts. You close your eyes, breathing in the soft scent of drying linen mixed with the faint perfume of rosemary water from earlier. It's not exactly the Roman baths, but it's your own version of peace. A quirky story you once heard comes to mind. Some Romans believed that sleeping on freshly washed sheets kept away bad dreams. You wonder if that's true. If so, the mistress of the house is probably having the sweetest dreams in all of Rome thanks to your efforts. You smirk at the thought, imagining her dreaming of parties and gossip while you stand here, folding the very sheets that make her slumber so perfect. The lamplight flickers, and you know it's time to wind down the courtyard chores. You gather the last dry tunics, stacking them carefully, each one folded with a precision that would make even the steward shut up for once. Your hands are sore, the skin raw from a day of scrubbing, but there's pride hidden in the aches. These clothes clean, soft, and perfectly aligned are proof of your quiet, unseen victories. As you place the final stack on the bench, you pause and look up at the night sky. The stars are faint, dimmed by the glow of oil lamps across the city, but they're there, watching silently as Rome goes about its business. You imagine the countless other maids, cooks, and workers across the city doing the same, each one tending to their own little world, unseen but essential. It's a comforting thought, like you're part of something bigger, even if it's just the great, invisible web of daily life. The music from the lyre fades, replaced by the distant laughter of a few late-night revelers. You smile, knowing that tomorrow someone will bring you a toga stained with wine and ask you to work your magic again. For now, though, the night is calm and your work is nearly done. You take a deep breath, letting the cool air fill your lungs, and whisper to yourself, one day at a time, one sheet at a time. As you stack the last of the folded sheets, your mind drifts to thoughts that don't normally find room in the frenzy of daylight. In the quiet, with only the occasional creak of the wooden beams and the distant barking of a street dog, you allow yourself to wonder, is this all there is? You look down at your raw, soap-stained hands and think about the tiny shop you dream of owning one day, a corner stand near the Forum, maybe, selling bread, olive oil, or even scented soaps. A place where your name, not someone else's, sits proudly above the doorway. The notion of freedom feels both close and impossibly far. Technically, if you save enough denarii, you might one day purchase your freedom. But how does one save coins when every spare scrap of pay goes to household needs, or the cook's sly contributions for using her rosemary stash? Historians still argue how common it was for housemaids or slaves to buy their liberty. but you cling to the hope that it's possible. Even a dream is better than nothing. You sit on the low bench, rubbing your sore calves, and let your thoughts wander. Maybe you could barter your way to freedom, trade your skills, your time, even your secret laundry tricks for something valuable enough to start anew. You imagine it now, standing behind a stall filled with freshly baked bread or jars of lavender oil, chatting with customers instead of scrubbing their clothes. A life where the only stains you worry about are from kneading dough, not someone else's careless wine spill. It's a comforting fantasy, but one you tuck back into your heart like a hidden letter. The courtyard is almost silent now, the night air cool against your skin. The oil lamps cast long, lazy shadows, and you can hear the faint hum of Rome at rest, distant chatter, a cart rolling over uneven stones, the whisper of wind through olive trees. For once, the absence of orders, shouts, and bustling footsteps feels like a gift. You close your eyes for a moment and let the peace settle in your bones. One quirky thought pops into your head. The mistress owns more garments than she can wear in a season, yet half of them stay folded, untouched, while you wash and rewash the same plain wool shift every day. If that isn't the universe's sense of humor, what is? You picture yourself striding into the atrium in one of her silk stolas, arms crossed, daring anyone to tell you that you don't look like a lady of the house. The image makes you chuckle quietly, the sound echoing softly in the courtyard. Still, not all aspects of servitude are terrible. There's a certain security in knowing where you'll sleep, what you'll eat, even if it's just yesterday's bread crust, and that no one expects you to be anything but reliable. Freedom, though tempting, is also terrifying. What if the outside world is harsher than these stone walls? What if your dream of a shop is just that, a dream, easily crushed by reality? You sigh, torn between longing and caution. The cat, as if sensing your mood, jumps onto the bench beside you. It curls up, purring softly, its warmth pressing against your side. You scratch behind its ears, grateful for its silent companionship. If you were free, you whisper to it, would you come back here? The cat blinks slowly, as if to say, only if the food is good. You laugh, the sound easing some of the tension that clings to your shoulders. The moon is higher now, painting the courtyard in a pale glow. You glance at the drying garments swaying gently in the breeze, their clean folds glowing like trophies of your labor. Each one is a testament to your patience, your endurance, and the quiet skill no one bothers to praise. Maybe freedom isn't just about money or status, maybe it's also in these small victories, in knowing that every day you bring a little order to the chaos. As you gather the last stack of folded linens, you whisper a silent vow to yourself. One day, I'll save enough for that shop. It may take years, but you'll get there. In the meantime, you'll keep working, keep dreaming, and keep finding little sparks of joy, like the smell of freshly washed linen under the moonlight, or the brief warmth of a cat's purr against your hand. The night deepens, and the household grows still. You pause one last time before heading inside, staring at the stars barely visible above Rome's rooftops. They seem distant, like tiny coins scattered across the sky, waiting to be collected by someone brave enough to reach. You let out a slow breath, feeling both weary and quietly hopeful. Tomorrow will bring another mountain of laundry, but for now, you let yourself dream. The night air is cool and carries a quiet sigh, as if the city itself is finally resting after a long day of being the center of the world. You stand in the courtyard, staring at the last of the linens hanging under the moonlight. They sway gently, like sleepy sails on a ship docked at the edge of dreams. Your feet ache, your hands are stiff from endless scrubbing, and yet there's a strange calm that comes with knowing you've done all you can for today. Every tunic is folded, every towel rinsed, every toga saved from the ruin of red wine and garum stains. The house is nearly silent now. The guests are gone, their laughter a fading memory that echoes faintly in the marble atrium. The mistress has retreated to her chambers, likely already nestled in the crisp sheets you folded with so much care. The cook snores softly in her corner of the kitchen, the smell of roasted boar still lingering like a stubborn ghost. Even the steward has disappeared, his obsessive counting done for the night. It's just you, the quiet, and the whisper of fabric drying on the line. You sit on the low bench, pulling your wool shawl around your shoulders, and let the stillness settle over you. The cat curls up on your lap, its purring vibrating like a tiny, comforting drumbeat. You stroke its fur absent-mindedly, staring up at the stars peeking through the gaps between rooftops. Rome, with all its grandeur, power, and chaos, feels far away in this moment. Here, in the courtyard, it's just you and the simple rhythm of your own breath. As you lean back, a wave of exhaustion hits you, a deep, satisfying fatigue that comes from a day's work done well. It's not glamorous, it's not celebrated, but it's yours. You think back to the day's small victories, the stubborn stain that finally surrendered, the togas that gleamed white in the sun, the mistress's rare smile of approval when she noticed the myrtle scent on her stola. These moments, small as they are, stitch together the quiet fabric of your life. The lamplight flickers, casting dancing shadows on the walls. You close your eyes, listening to the faint hum of the city outside, a cart rattling over cobblestones, a dog barking somewhere in the distance, and the occasional muffled song of a night watchman keeping time. It's a lullaby of sorts, rough but oddly comforting. You imagine tomorrow the water to fetch, the endless folding, and feel a mix of dread and acceptance. This is your life, and for all its aches and stains, it's a life with purpose. A soft breeze rustles through the courtyard, brushing against your face and carrying the faint scent of rosemary and lavender from the day's washing. It feels like the earth itself is telling you to rest. You lean forward, blowing out the last oil lamp, and the darkness wraps around you like a blanket. The moonlight is enough now, soft and silver, a gentle reminder that even the hardest days end with quiet beauty. You rise slowly, leaving the cat to sleep on the bench, and make your way to your small cot in the corner of the servants' quarters. The rough linen sheets feel cool against your skin as you lie down, curling up like a child. Your muscles protest at first, but then they release, melting into the mattress with a sigh. The room smells faintly of soap and warm wool, a scent you've grown to associate with safety. Your eyes drift shut, and you allow your mind to wander. Maybe you dream of that little shop near the forum, maybe of a day when you wake without the clamor of carts and shouting vendors. Or maybe you simply dream of soft, endless fields of linen, all clean, all folded, all done. The night hums softly around you, cradling your thoughts like a quiet lullaby. And now the courtyard fades. You're no longer standing with a laundry basket or scrubbing a stubborn stain. Instead, you're drifting through a quiet Roman night. The breeze has softened, carrying the warmth of the day far away. The moonlight spreads like pale silk over the rooftops, turning everything into a slow-moving dream. You can hear the faint trickle of the fountain, its water gliding over carved stone, lulling you into a state of gentle stillness. Take a slow breath, in through your nose, feeling the cool night air, and out again, letting your shoulders sink just a little deeper into rest. Imagine the city outside the courtyard, all its noise and clamor, gradually fading like a distant echo. The forum, the markets, the shouting vendors, they're all sleeping now, leaving just the quiet heartbeat of Rome. And you, in this moment, are safe and still. Your hands, raw from the day's work, are warm now, relaxed. Your legs, tired from carrying heavy loads, feel weightless, as though they no longer belong to this world of chores and errands. There's nothing left to do tonight. No tunics to fold, no togas to save from clumsy diners, no steward to demand impossible perfection. There is only the hush of the night, the gentle sway of laundry in the breeze, and your breath, slow and even. Each blink becomes heavier, each thought softer, until they dissolve into a quiet, silvery nothing. The stars above seem to whisper, "You've done enough, you can rest now." Let the quiet Roman night carry you, like the softest sheet, into sleep.